This is the News 4 Rundown.
Welcome to the News 4 Rundown. I'm Ted Oberg. It's Monday, August 11th, a day that began with an awful lot of uncertainty about what public safety and policing would look like in this district, and a day that ends with us still looking for some of those very answers. As D.C. deals with what many lawmakers and D.C. residents are calling an extreme overreach of power by the President of the United States, Donald Trump announcing this morning he will federalize D.C. police and deploy hundreds of National Guard troops to the district in an attempt to crack down on crime. The president has said that the nation's capital is, in his words, one of the most dangerous cities anywhere in the world. We'll put that to the test. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser already refuting that statement, citing the drastic drop in D.C. crime. Tonight on The Rundown, we're going to help you understand what's going on and how this impacts your daily life. Coming up, we'll hear from a former MPD assistant police chief who was there the last time the feds took over in the 90s, what this enforcement could look like, and we'll hear from our national political reporter about the implications this could have on the 2026 political landscape. Plus, we'll take a look at crime numbers here in D.C. compared to other major cities across the nation and beyond. But we begin tonight with our man on this developing story from the very beginning, News 4's Mark Seagraves.
Ted, it's been a long day.
You started this day saying it is a very historic day in D.C. Did it live up to that?
More than I actually anticipated, yes. I was reporting early this morning that the National Guard would be deployed, that Trump was going to make that announcement. And that in and of itself, to deploy the National Guard in the nation's capital simply for a crime emergency, not for an inauguration, right, not for riots around the White House or things like that, but simply for crime
on a Monday.
Crime, exactly, would have been historic. For him to take control of the D.C. Police Department is something that has never happened before in this way, to federalize the police department in this way. And we're in uncharted waters, really. I mean, I know we had the control board, right, where the entire ecosystem was run by the federal government, but now you have the Attorney General who is going to be running the D.C. Police Department, according to President Trump. I mean, he said as of right now, she's in charge.
And that matters. Now, later in the day, and we'll hear from her in a second, the mayor tried to roll that back. But what do you think that means for the way D.C. is policed?
Look, that's what we're going to have to wait and find out. There were no specifics given either by the White House or the mayor's press briefing about exactly how all of this is going to work, other than the White House ultimately is in charge.
Now, look, hours ago, you were standing outside the Wilson building. The mayor was inside the Wilson building. We and she and you were all hearing it at the same time. Tell us what we're going to hear from the president.
So you heard the president talk about in really harsh, tough terms, and he was signaling this to other cities around the country. You know, New York to L.A. and cities in Democratic cities in between, putting them on notice that they could be next in his effort to curb crime, and threatening not just to take over the police department, not just to bring the National Guard, but to also activate the United States military in Washington, D.C. Here, take a listen to a little bit of what he said this morning.
So today we're declaring public safety emergency in the District of Columbia, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's fantastic, is taking command of the Metropolitan Police Department as of this moment. This city will no longer be a sanctuary for illegal alien criminals. We will have full, seamless, integrated cooperation at all levels of law enforcement, and we'll deploy officers across the district with an overwhelming presence. You'll have more police, and you'll be so happy because you'll be safe. When you walk down the street, you're going to see police, or you're going to see FBI agents. We're going to have a lot of agents on the street. And you're going to have a lot of essentially military, and we will bring in the military if it's needed, by the way.
He said that multiple times this morning. We'll bring in the military. He had Pete Hegseth with him there, who reiterated the same thing, that they are ready to go. Special units, he called them, that are ready to respond to the district if called upon. The mayor did push back on that a little bit, saying that she believed that would be illegal to do that. But other than that, the mayor really did not push back, and as you said, kind of played down the severity of what happened today.
But take me inside the room. When did she get any advance notice that any of this was going to happen?
So she got some advance notice about the National Guard. My sources told me that it was either early this morning or late last night that the D.C. National Guard, as a courtesy, let the mayor know that they had been contacted by the White House.
The Guard, which has some reporting to the mayor, not the White House.
That's
no
correct.
one from the White House
There
reached
was
out to her.
almost no coordination through this from the White House. And the mayor actually acknowledged this morning or this afternoon in her press conference that she was expecting the National Guard announcement, but she was not in any way expecting the federalization of the D.C. Police Department.
And as you start a partnership, right, because that's the way that they want to characterize this, as a partnership with the federal government to police D.C., is that any way to start off on the right foot?
Well, that's how the mayor is categorized. You know, that's how she wants to paint it. You know, the president didn't paint it that way at all. He was very much, you know, we're in charge, Pam Bondi's in charge, we're going to do, you know, the president was misstated crime statistics over and over again, as he has been, and you have been doing a great job of kind of outlining that. But you know, he said, look, if you spit on the police, they're going to hit, and they're going to hit hard. They're going to be tough.
You spit, we hit, he said.
That was exactly
like a bumper sticker.
That's right. That's an exact quote from the president this morning. The mayor was asked repeatedly about, you know, what's it going to take for you to really push back? And she really, again, was downplaying the severity of this. But at the end, her last answer was a question to the Washington Post, who quoted her talking about the possibility of this to Congress last year. Here's what she said to that answer.
I'm going to work every day to make sure it's not a complete disaster. What could be a disaster is if we lose communities who won't call the police. That could be a disaster. Well, it will be a disaster if communities won't talk to the police, if a crime has been committed and could help solve that crime. That could be a disaster. It would be a disaster if people who aren't committing crimes are antagonized into committing crimes. That would be a disaster.
So that's as dire as she got during her press conference today, on a day with the biggest assault on home rule of Washington, D.C. since the 1990s control board.
And you've covered her. She's been mayor for 10 years. You covered her for years before that. Do you get a sense when you look sort of behind the voice at the podium there that she's angry about this?
You know, look, I have to imagine that she is. But she has done what she said she's going to do. She doesn't want to pick a fight with the president of the United States. She's trying to get to the other side of these 4 years that he's in office. And I've said this many times. Every day she wakes up that she's mayor, she's winning. She's mission accomplished, and that's it. But
do you think D.C. residents believe that?
No, and I think that's what we're going to see, and could be the biggest problem. Because if you go on social media, if you look at the reaction from D.C. residents, one, there's a lot of misinformation. A lot of people who think they've overturned home rule, that they're instituting martial law, that he went much further than he actually did. But there is this thirst, I believe, in the district amongst residents to have somebody stand up and push back and fight for them the way she did. Remember when she painted Black Lives Matter on the road leading up to the White House?
Yes, but none of us need to be reminded of the fact that the Black Lives Matter Plaza is no longer there.
That's right. That's right. And so she has taken a very different approach to this Trump administration than she did to the first Trump administration.
So let's listen to what some of these residents told our Amy Cho this afternoon after the president's announcement.
We will not stand here and allow authoritarianism in Washington, D.C.
With the mayor being in power so long, I think she's kind of used to how things are going, and I think Donald Trump really wants to clean it up, and I'm all for it.
Where do you think she goes next? Look, already the chief has met with the commissioner, who is also the DEA commissioner, has plenty on his plate as his day job. But where does it go next?
I think everybody is just going to wait and see what the directives come out of the White House and what they tell the police to do. And when we find out when and where the National Guard will be deployed. And we haven't even scratched the surface of what they're going to do with the homeless encampments that the president railed against today. I asked the mayor about that. She said she has no indication of what they're going to do.
Mark, thanks for your work all day.
Thanks, Ted.
We'll watch it all week. Coming up, we dive into D.C.'s crime stats. The president's comments comparing this city to some of the worst in the world. Also, coming up, a look at our forecast. Our chances for showers. Doug?
We saw high temperatures today in the upper 80s, actually the warmest day so far in the month of August, but we have yet to hit 90, and that's coming. So are the chances for showers and storms. I'll update you on what to expect. 10-day forecast coming up.
Trump has painted D.C. as a city of lawlessness, using that as a reason for declaring a public safety emergency this morning. During his news conference, he compared the crime rate of our nation's capital to other cities around the world, including Bogota, Colombia, and Mexico City. But the comparisons may not be wholly accurate, according to researchers we spoke to. Take a look. Here is President Trump with that chart, and there's a little bit of a better view. D.C. towering over all of those other cities. Researchers, however, are concerned about the way data is kept in some of these countries and the differences in rights, freedoms, policing in various places around the world. One expert described Trump's chart as comparing apples to spaceships. But that's not to...
but homicides are down, shootings, robberies, carjackings are down in D.C. since 2023 and 2021. And that's mirroring what we're seeing in a lot of big cities. But, D.C. still... has higher than a large city average that we've seen in our sample cities, our 30 to 40 sample cities. And we're still above the pre-pandemic baseline. Right.
So look, we're not trying to say D.C. is perfect, even though crime is down this year. Take a look, violent crime down by more than a quarter and other categories down as well. But D.C. has a long way to go. We know D.C. has issues with crime. D.C. officials admit there's work to do. Just last month, the Council on Criminal Justice released this report, mid-year 2025, looking at how cities across our country stack up halfway through this year in the fight against crime. And D.C. is right in the middle of that pack. The report collected data from roughly 36 cities across the United States. Not every city reports the same statistics. But when we looked at where D.C. ranks against cities that do report in homicide and carjacking, D.C. slightly above the national average. That orange line there, the national average, D.C. slightly above. But take a look at these categories, also very serious. Assaults with a gun and aggravated assault, which tend to be more serious. D.C. well below the national average. The point is, D.C. is certainly not the most dangerous city in the country, let alone the most dangerous city in the world. Plus, in all of these categories, D.C. is well below where it was in 2023 coming out of the pandemic. The drop in crime has been significant since then. There is a question we've heard from some of you, especially on social media, about believing crime stats from D.C. police, especially after the recent suspension of an MPD commander accused of allegedly changing crime statistics, as our colleague Paul Wagner reported just days ago. President Trump referenced the story today from the White House podium. Currently, just one commander has been suspended, and he denies any wrongdoing. However, the crime drops we've seen in every district across this city. So it is hard to believe that one commander could have changed dozens of crimes all across the city in districts he didn't work in. We want to take a look now at something that we heard from Police Chief Smith earlier today. She talked about her plans on how to work within this new environment. And she says it will be a partnership, that there will be ways to work with the federal government and MPD. But we want to bring in a former officer who spent more than 4 decades in law enforcement, half of that time at MPD, half of it with the feds. Joshua Edermeyer is an assistant professor at the University of Virginia at their new Crime and Public Safety Center. But he began his career inside the Metropolitan Police Department, where he served for 23 years as an officer, detective commander, and assistant chief before joining DHS and the Federal Protective Services, among others, in federal law enforcement. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Ted.
So let's talk about this decision to activate the National Guard and send hundreds of federal agents into D.C. It came very quickly with no connection to things like an ICE event or an ICE raid, the inaugural. From your knowledge, tell us, what's this enforcement going to do here, and how would it look for families who pick up the phone and call 911?
Well, I think it's important to remember that this is a federal district and that the DC police have been working with federal law enforcement since the beginning of home rule and beforehand. So this is nothing new for the DC police. Their relationships with federal law enforcement and with the National Guard, they are deep, strong. They have great connections with each other. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make on day-to-day law enforcement. I think when a person calls the police, who's going to show up at the door are going to be DC police. I don't think you're going to find other law enforcement agencies responding.
Yeah. And you know, in his news conference today, and I don't know how much of it you saw, but the president said this will be easy. Look, you've worked both sides of this coin in law enforcement in DC. Is it easy to lower crime even further in DC?
Well, nothing is easy in DC, and nothing is easy in lowering crime. But I do believe that a key factor in the success going forward is going to be who's in charge. So I believe that the DC police have incredibly strong relationships with the community. Mm-hmm. And I think the community is satisfied with their police.
In a message
and
to...
so,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, in a unified command, if the DC police are in charge and all of the federal agencies and the National Guard are coordinating with the DC police, I think there's a higher degree of success possible.
So to that point, in a message just about an hour ago to 3,100 police officers in D.C., Chief Smith said D.C. police leadership will continue to provide leadership as this mission goes on. Why do you believe that's so important, and what's the danger if the feds go off on their own?
Well, you've seen this conversation in other cities where police chiefs and sheriffs have been worried about federal agencies coming into their communities, engaging in police actions, and the community not knowing who they are and maybe building distrust of the police. In DC, like I said, there's a good relationship, and as long as there's coordination and the DC police are aware or with any agency operating in the city, I think that will allay some fears.
Yeah. The DC police unions come out in support of this. There are other residents who have said this is a good idea. Look, it could be 30 days, it could be 60 days, it could be 90 days. Sort of, when do we know whether this thing works or not?
Well, I think we're going to see an early drop in crime, because there's just going to be a huge presence. We know that the presence of police does deter crime. The presence of those National Guard soldiers will deter crime. Yeah. But we'll see over time whether that can be sustained. I guess the DC police are very effective, and that's why crime has been dropping. But the perception doesn't necessarily comport with the crime statistics. Yeah. And people, if they don't feel safe, they really just don't care about the crime statistics if they don't feel safe walking in their neighborhood.
Yeah. Former MPD Assistant Police Chief Joshua Ettermeyer, thanks so much for joining us tonight and for sharing your experience with us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. This is historic. We know you have questions. We do too. You can count on News 4 to get the answers. Head to the NBCWashington.com news site for our latest reporting. We'll also bring you the latest updates on air at 11 o'clock tonight and the NBC Washington app in between now and then. Now here's Chief Meteorologist Doug Camera with a look at this week's weather. Welcome back on a busy Monday night. Democrats pushing back against President Trump's actions today. They call this a brazen power grab. Political theater, say some. Earlier today, we heard from NBC News national political reporter Ben Commissar. He noted the clear difference in the way Mayor Bowser and D.C. leaders engaged with the Trump administration toward the end of Trump's first term and the way they're doing it now. Plus, he talked about the optics and timing of today's announcement and what it could mean politically in the upcoming 2026 midterm elections and beyond.
A lot has changed in 8 years. When you think about the posture that Mayor Bowser took in that first term, she really was, especially in that back half of the first term, when Democrats at least had one control back of the House and there was a little bit more cushion there, she really fashioned herself as the tip of the anti-Trump spear. You think about in the wake of the death of George Floyd in 2020, the decision to erect Black Lives Matter Plaza right outside the president's window. It was a clear message and a clear shot at the president. And then just a couple months later, obviously we had the Capitol attack on January 6th. The mayor was extremely blasting the president and those in the aftermath of that. Things have changed. Republicans have tried to frame a lot of their policies as coming in and fixing problems caused by Democrats, whether that be crime or otherwise. The question, I think, is that frame going to hold? Will Democrats be able to push back and make a different argument and sort of argue that President Trump has made things worse? Or will President Trump's argument that he's coming in to make things better hold? And also the other question, though, is how much will this weigh on the minds of voters when you have other issues like the economy, other issues like that are hit closer to home, frankly, than some of these clashes in these major cities between Republicans and Democrats?
That was NBC News national political reporter Ben Commissar. We thank him for joining us. We should note the president was asked about other topics during his news conference this morning. We checked. Spoke more than 13,000 words. Epstein. And the Epstein case was not one of those words. And so, Doug, on a day with 100 storms downtown. Yeah, you tell me what it looked like in your world.
Nicely done on that one. I'll tell you, it's looking a lot better next couple of days if you're hoping for rain, because we actually need it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have not seen any rain so far in the month of August, and we also have not hit 90 degrees. Today, a high temperature of 88 degrees, but still quite nice. A little bit of humidity, but not bad across our area after what was a fantastic weekend. Take a look at the temperatures now, 85 degrees, but it feels like 89. Notice that dew point getting closer to 70. That's when you really start to feel it. So a little bit more sweating going on around our region right now. Temperature-wise, we're still in the low to mid-80s. 86 Leesburg, 84 Manassas, 82 right now in Clinton, Maryland. Annapolis coming in at 81. Storm P4 radar, nothing to show. We're dry. We're going to stay that way tonight and most of tomorrow, but we're going to start to see an increase in our chances for rain. Look down to the south. The Carolinas inundated with rain. Flash flooding going on again around the Raleigh area. We haven't seen any rain. They've seen a ton over the past couple of weeks, and that moisture is trying to work its way our way. It's going to come first in the form of humidity, and then we're going to see more clouds, and that chance of showers really start to increase. And I'll show you why. One storm system off to the west. You see that back towards Chicago and St. Louis. That's moving east. At the same time, the storm to the south is starting to move to the north. They will come together on Wednesday. Tomorrow, we'll just see a couple of scattered showers, maybe an isolated thunderstorm. Can't rule out a downpour or two, but most of us remain on the dry side. Tomorrow night, we're good, but then here come those storms. Watch what happens here. They kind of move right on through our area. And look, Wednesday morning, here's 10 a.m., and we're seeing some showers and storms off to the west moving through our area during the day. If this occurs, as far as the cloud cover, that could really help to keep temperatures down a little bit. So that would be a good thing here. Talk about temperatures, though, reaching 90. Tomorrow, I'm going 90 degrees. Fog early. That could be a big thing. Fog could be dense in some areas. Hot and humid with a chance of a thunderstorm in the afternoon. But again, most of us should remain dry. Better chance of storms on Wednesday and Thursday. High temperatures around 92, depending on cloud cover, especially Wednesday. Look at this weekend. Saturday and Sunday, hot. High temperature of 94 on Sunday. Definitely on the warm and humid side. But again, intense heat, not too bad for this time of year. Making our way towards next week, another chance of showers and storms in the middle of next week. But all in all, 90s trying to make a return.
Too hot. Thanks, Doug. Look, this is a busy night, the first of at least 30 of a federal takeover of the D.C. Police Department, something that's been called historic. Optimists say it'll help D.C., but there are an awful lot of people watching closely. We've already heard here in the News 4 newsroom that the first elements of the 800 National Guard troops have started to deploy to D.C. streets, and we have crews checking that out right now. Plus all of this and what it means for you as we continue to watch this federal law enforcement takeover roll out. We thank you for joining us for the News 4 Rundown. We'll have a lot more answers tonight on the News 4 News at 11. For now, I'm Ted Oberg. Thanks for joining us.